And good afternoon, Santa Cruz Voice listeners. This is the Freedom Forum with your host, Jeff Bosshard, and co-host today is Vernon Bohr. We'll take this opportunity to today look back on the major news events of 2024 as we started last time and see where we think we should be going. And that'll just be our opinion, but we do have a newly installed president and he's taking lots of actions, and we should be concerned as to how, if at all, they would affect us. But first, I want to look back a little bit on the last couple of weeks to see where we are on the LA fire and local PG&E battery problems where we had the fire so near to us. So, Vernon, do you have anything new to add concerning the fires? Have you heard anything lately, especially about PG&E, other than our president and the governor met with each other amicably, thank goodness?
Yeah, the PG&E fire is an interesting one from my perspective, in that we count on our public officials to do their job and keep us safe. There's a lot of commentary. A lot of people were concerned about that fire because of the toxic gases that get given off in those kinds of fires. And one of the things that always comes to mind is the fact that they have to balance the fact that they're dealing with a wide population range, a wide range of opinions, and how do you deal with all the people out there when they start losing trust in their government, for example? We've gotten kind of to that point in a lot of respects because of our technology. So everyone's got the ability to tune in the internet, get information on their own. And I've been finding a lot of comment recently that people are less likely to trust government. So, and there again is what is government's job regarding both our safety in terms of keeping the public calm so that we can handle the situations in front of us, in terms of giving us all the information when we might not be in a position to accurately assess what that means.
Yes, indeed. And I learned a little bit more last Friday because I tuned in early before getting on the danger zone for Jim 2, who had to be absent last Friday at 4. Becky Steinbrunner, my former partner in Community Matters program here on this station, had a couple of guests talking about various issues surrounding especially the PG&E battery fire and other battery opportunities being set up by our county. The first thing I think was most important, and the others will wait a while, and the important thing is the advice given immediately to our public was go indoors, shut your windows, and stay until we hear, it's all clear. Well, Becky had an expert on that subject who teaches the subject of the soundproofness and the airproofness of homes. Some are better than others, but typically, he said, the entire interior air of a home will change every 3 hours. Uh-huh. And so after that, you're subject to whatever comes in to take its place, including all those bad vapors. Better, they said, to go away somewhere, if you can. So that's great advice, but, some people can't take it, especially elderlies. That's an issue.
Yeah. Basically what you're saying to me, indirectly, you didn't say it, I'm going to put it in my words, is that within 3 hours, there's not much difference. There's virtually no difference between the outside air in your area and your inside air, whether you keep your house shut or not.
Yeah. And we know it because when we try to heat our house, the hot air escapes, it just blows out. And it's replaced with whatever can come in.
Well, we ran into this not in terms of the chemical aspects of the fire, but the air around here was terrible during the Paradise fires.
Yes, it drifted down here. We could see the smoke looming overhead.
And what was fascinating about that to me is that, in terms of particulate matter, which was not particularly the case in the Moss Landing fire because they had a lot of chemicals. But, if you just have a box fan and you buy a regular filter, like you would put in your forced air heating,
yeah,
start the fan, it'll suck that heater, that filter up against the back, and you can do a pretty good job of internal air infiltration for the particulate matter, which can make a big difference. Did you know that, Jeff?
I didn't know. I remember trying to study aspects of mathematics, including partial differential equations, to know how these various temperatures and gases move around with each other. I was never able to keep up with that, which led to my changing majors from math to computer science. But I agree that you know what is happening because you know what is happening.
Well, I was just curious about that because, by the way, I happen to have an air monitor I bought fairly cheap when they were under $100 and stuff, and it gives you the formaldehyde concentrations and the particle concentrations of 1, 2.5, and 10 micrograms per liter, so you can check it against the air quality on the internet. You can look that up as well too. All that information's available. And as a side note, that's one of the things that amazes me. We have this amazing technology we often forget to use.
Yes. Or maybe don't learn enough about it in the first place.
Yes.
Which include a lot of things that we miss in our so-called education.
So, yeah. Well, what else did they have to say on Becky's show when they talked about the air quality and the fire down there?
Well, that was the gist of it from what I got. The second guest talked, as I said, more about what is planned for our future here in this county with regard to setting up new battery locations to keep our power grid going, I assume, in connections. Again, with the same toxicity that occurs when batteries explode and there's fire. Now, the problem with the fire situation in PG&E's situation was that the systems they set up to put down the fire didn't work.
Well, yeah, another thing that comes up that a lot of us, I think, should look at is that we are going toward battery technology to save and clean up the environment, and nothing is without its problems. When these Teslas explode in an accident, you have the same problem there. And so now what happens when you load the system with electric vehicles?
Yeah, and that turned out to show itself in big time in the LA fires when so many of the EVs for the rich people there were consumed in flame and melted down. Even it was hot enough to melt aluminum, which would really be something, and then released all those toxins down into the soil, which now, when the rains are coming or there, can wash down wherever, down the rivers or into the sea. Wonderful. Consequences of bad intentions or good intentions gone bad. We want to save the planet, but can we really? Or is the planet just going to control us forever?
Jeff, there's a reason we came up with sayings, one of which is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I get a kick out of that one because I think we always got to be aware of that. Our good intentions often don't turn out the way we expect them to. And there are always unintended consequences in every action, and no matter how thoroughly you try and think it through.
Yeah, we can come back to that when we talk more about our future. But I want to go back a bit into the past and ask you a question, Mr. Bohr.
Yes.
Do you remember where you were and what you were doing on the exact date of November 22, 1963?
I do.
Oh, and what was that?
I was just getting ready to go out for PE, physical education, at high school. I was a junior in high school at that particular point in time, and we were just gotten out on the field when they got out the bullhorns and told everyone to come in, made the announcement, and sent everyone home.
Yeah, and that coincides with what we often hear. It was brought up when 9/11 occurred. Everyone remembers, if they were alive at that time, where they were and what they were doing on that November date, and then followed with 9/11. We never forget that Tuesday. It's ingrained in our culture and taught in our schools and reminding us once in a while. And I have a story to tell about where I was and what I was doing, because it'll show my age, but I don't mind. I was fresh out of college, and sitting down in my first job working for the Apollo program at North American Rockwell, which was prime contractor for that program, having 100,000 employees that they brought in en masse with quick notice to help get us up to the moon. And that's what intrigued me as I left school. I could have stayed in the Silicon Valley, perhaps, and become part of the computer generation, the silicon generation, or whatever. But this one had my heart. I was there, and over a loudspeaker came the voice that said, "Please notice, President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas." Well, I didn't even know there was a speaker there, but we heard it and didn't really know much to do about it. And I spent, that was a Friday, I went ahead with plans to fly up to San Francisco airport and then participate as a person, as a fan of Stanford University in the big game, Stanford versus Cal. And that was called off, or postponed anyway.
Yeah,
so it was kind of a dead
was.
Weekend.
Yeah.
So I repeated, went up the next weekend. But the future of that was that some years down the road, after I had worked in the Apollo program for a couple of years, and started instead to go to law school to become a lawyer. And while in law school, there was a debate set up between one of my professors, Professor Lieberman, who was a staff attorney for the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission is the group that was appointed by President Johnson then, who took over for Kennedy, to search out what happened and why. And Earl Warren, who had been California governor, was now our Chief Justice, headed that commission, and this professor of ours was on the staff. And the argument was, on his side, that it was a single bullet fired by Lee Harvey Oswald that struck both the president and Governor Connolly, and that was it. Whereas a book had been written, probably several books of conspiracy theories, that no, there was many, many people conspiring to make this happen, and poor Mr. Oswald was just a dupe, or maybe he was part of it, but he was a dupe. And this took the form of movies. I remember the movie JFK.
I do.
Another one, not so well known perhaps, was called Executive Action.
I don't know that I saw that one.
Starring Burt Lancaster as a high-tech executive who was masterminding this whole thing and set up drills to help teach or train the people that would do this. And there were many actors in the thing, including someone up on the so-called grassy knoll where they saw some smoke like a gunshot taking place instead of from the school depot where Lee Harvey Oswald's gun was found, and with his fingerprints and all that stuff. So it leads to intrigue. And the sad thing about the report given by the Warren Commission was that it was only partial. Even though it was many volumes of books in size, they left untold some data that wasn't to be released for another 50 years. Well, 50 years added on to 1963 brings us to what, 1918? Or 2018?
Mm-hmm.
So that came and went. It hasn't happened yet. But President Trump, in his campaigning, said, well, that's one of the things I'm going to do is open up that JFK files. And he hasn't opened it up entirely yet, but he's put a committee together to look it over to see if there is anything in it that really shouldn't be given out, like how they gathered all this information, how we do things. Sure. But we would like to know who was involved, why and how. And one of the conspiracy theories is, of course, that the CIA was behind the shooting. There's many others. The Cubans were doing it, or the mafia, or whatever.
We are a suspicious species, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, some people say that a conspiracy theorist is just someone who knows everything well in advance of the rest of us, and then it comes true. But we don't know. We'll find out, I hope.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You were hearing all this and wondering, and I'm doing the same thing.
Well, it's interesting. One of the ones I saw along the way, it was on History Channel or one of those, where they actually set up an experiment to see if the single bullet was possible.
Yes.
Under ideal conditions. I've seen a couple specials on that where they had the gels that simulate tissue, They set up everything perfectly with the angles and a rifle and everything else, and everything in the right position. They back calculated from all the photography they had, the angles and everything that they knew, pulled the trigger and showed that it was. Yeah. And I just saw, it's funny this had come up, I just forgot about that. Someone just posted something the other day that was a frame from a video suggesting that it was the driver that shot Kennedy.
Oh, from the front? Or the
Secret
Service from the back?
As I recall, he fell forward from the shot.
Uh-huh.
But that still is one of those mysteries that people have been arguing about for years. And I had one friend over the years that said one of the things that he made him believe that it was a single person involved is that based on that saying, the only way that you can keep a secret between two people is if one of them is dead. And so that over all those years, no one had been forthcoming with a confession of having been involved in that.
I see, that's true. On the other hand, part of the history is that 2 days after the event of the shooting on the Friday,
yes,
Sunday morning, Lee Harvey Oswald was being led out of the jail where he'd been incarcerated to a more secure place. And he was shot dead by a fellow named Jack Ruby.
Yes.
Who was later tried for the killing and found guilty, even though he was represented by a high, what do we say, a top attorney from our area. Didn't do that great a defense by the.
Was that deliberate, though, Jeff?
Pardon?
Was that deliberate? He didn't do that great of a defense?
No, I think he just. He was well known, but he wasn't that good at doing criminal cases.
Okay.
He was good on civil, suing people. Much the same profession that my dear friend Jim, too, and I had been in, but not quite so much. I did a few trials in criminal cases, but it wasn't how I got my bread and butter. But
I think it's easy sorry for interrupting, I think it's easy for people that have never lived through something like that to not fully appreciate the effect it has on the country when it happens.
Right. And to me, I hadn't voted for John F. Kennedy Jr., John F. Kennedy, but I didn't vote against him either. What comes out of all this, though, is that gut feeling you get right afterwards. He was our president. He was our president. Just like, almost like Donald Trump getting shot at that point, he was more than just, a candidate. He was possibly going to be our president.
Yeah.
You have to worry,
He was our president in waiting.
What he was waiting for should never have happened. Yeah, I kind of worried from then on, is he going to ever go outside again? But he did. He stood up to a lot of stuff. But that's another subject for another day, perhaps. But again, our president was the one who got killed. And
so is that stuff online yet?
No. Again, the committee has been appointed to sift through it for another, 30 days maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And then we should see something. And it could give us all the answers we wanted. It may not. But one thing I've been troubled by is that in order for this single bullet to do what it did, is first go cleanly through the head of our president and then tumble, and hit the governor who's below him there in the car in such a way that it made a bigger entry, and did more damage to the area hit. The other thing a couple of things that kind of left up in the air, it was a Secret Service person who came in from another detail into the hospital where the president had been taken. And on a chair in the area where this all was being taken care of, he found a bullet. It had been expended, and he gave it to somebody. He didn't remember where, but he wondered why that was there. And there's other things that go on that make people wonder, but, we never get perfect answers to every question. There's always something you can leave behind.
Yeah, and the question that always arises for me is to what extent does it serve us as a collective and citizenship for everyone to know everything.
Well, we should be careful not to know everything. We might not be able to carry the load with us, the burden that it might bear. But that just leaves the question unanswered. It's especially important if it was somebody or some entity that we thought we trusted that was behind it. That would be one thing. Just like maybe some people don't trust the FBI lately because of some things they didn't or didn't do. But that's a different question. Before we go farther, Mr. Bohr, I want to announce to our listening public that you can listen and be heard out there and tell us anything you want to tell us about that event or something else, or ask questions, because we are open for that with phone calls at the phone number 265-5050. So, anything else?
Yeah. There's that saying, one must be careful about what one says in front of the children. It usually has to do with families, in terms of mom and dad acting in concert, and children don't have a right to know, or it doesn't benefit children to know everything. And in the structure of government, we give away certain rights to our elected officials to act on our behalf. And so that's always a delicate balance, because everyone's got an opinion on everything. And to the extent that we realize that we are a society that works together, or should work together, and that our governments and supposed to work on our common interest or our common goals. Well, you and I talked briefly last night, and as I said to you, I grew up in the days of the cowboy movies, and there used to be a term called stampeding the herd, and that's one of the things that that always concerns me, where it comes to throwing everything out into the public, because as we know, as information travels, it starts to get distorted. We all played the telephone game in school, where something gets whispered in the first kid's ear, and by the time it comes out at the end, it has no resemblance. And these things take on a life of their own, and as long as we realize that there is a cost in putting out all that information, and we need to become responsible for our hearing it.
Yeah, it also should remind us about there was a plot in a movie in which Jack Nicholson starred. He was a colonel or a general, and there was a trial involving him as a witness, and I think it was Tom Cruise who was asking the question. But the question is, why don't you tell us what happened? And his answer was, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot of us can't handle the truth, maybe. Yeah. But we need not be coddled and babied if we are a true democratic institution, because we need to know before we vote. So
Sure.
Is important.
And what's important there is to know to vote for people who are responsible to act on our behalf, so that ultimately it all falls on our shoulders, because we're a representative government.
Well, one thing I can trust you to share things with me. You're always pretty open.
Yeah.
You think I can handle it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I hope our listeners can too.
Well, I think there's one last thing on that, is that one of the things that there's the non-contradiction principle, and it comes from Plato, and it says two opposing statements about the same thing can't both be true. And so I think it's important to reconcile opposing statements, so to speak. And by that, I mean you might not be able to get them to agree, but find out where the disagreement of the 2 points of view are. Are you talking about the same thing or not? It's like the old statement, glass half empty, glass half full. That's not a contradiction. They're both saying the same thing from a different point of view. Right.
And you can interpret it depending on what you want it to be.
Yeah.
I want it to be higher. I want it to be more full or less full.
And so
don't confuse me with the facts.
I said that to someone one time. It says, "Well, you can't reconcile everything," and I didn't mean it like reconcile, make them agree. I meant like you need to find out where the disparity is between the conflicting views, so that you know that you're both talking about the same thing.
I think you're telling me right now why I didn't want to become a judge. I wouldn't want that job where you're sitting up there in the middle of a firestorm. You can't go anywhere. You don't have anything to look at except maybe a window. But that's another life.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back a few weeks, if we can,
Yes.
Mr. Bohr, to where we were talking about major world events, country events. We got down pretty good list of things. But one that we didn't talk about was that the Chinese party has hacked into our telecom and U.S. Treasury system.
This is telepathy, Jeff.
I hope so. Why?
I looked down at mine and I thought that's the one that we should start with. We didn't talk about that last night.
Well, we didn't, but I'd crossed some off that we did talk about, and that's where we were left.
Well, I didn't cross them off. I just looked down at it and I says, of everything that's left on the list, that's probably as important as anything.
It is. And there was an interview of outgoing FBI Director Wray on 60 Minutes, among which, of other things, he said, the Chinese are our biggest geopolitical concern. And, of course, we believe that. I mean, you can have Russia, you can have Iran, you can have even North Korea to worry about, but it's China, China, China. They're the ones that are building their ships and getting more technology down pat, taking where they can get it.
Yeah, I saw something posted the other day, and I haven't followed up on it. It was... So there again, you can't tell what's real or what's not. It looked like it was to a science site, but I didn't give a link. And it said that the Chinese have come up with a gun with a firepower to fire something like 450,000 rounds per minute. It exceeds our fastest guns by tenfold.
Yeah, well, I guess you need to worry about quick draw. Whoever gets the first shot off, maybe it'll be the last opportunity.
Well, the thing too is that maybe, if you miss everything, you might run out of ammunition quicker.
Yeah. That takes me back, if you don't mind, a little bit in history of the world, that many of our scientists who developed some of these things like machine guns, took something and advanced it from a single shot to multiple shots and then had machine guns, and they kept saying to themselves, these weapons will be so bad that no one will ever dare use them. And the same thing was said, I guess, about the atomic bomb. Well, we use it, but sparingly.
If we can think of it, someone will probably use it along the way.
All right. Well, before we kick off that last segment of our program today, we do have some bills to pay, and I want to play a set of commercials that'll make that happen. So all I have to do is do that.
Hi, folks. I came across a man who found a genie lamp. He rubbed it, and the genie appeared and granted him wishes. The man thought for some time, knowing how important this was to his future. His wish? Yes, a Knox roof, installed as always with quality materials and superior workmanship. I said, you don't have to find a genie to achieve these things. Call Knox Roofing today at 461-0634. 461-0634. Okay, thanks, folks.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am Attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, Attorney Angel L. Hess at santacruzlegal.net.
The Hook is California's first ever cannabis outlet. 100% locally owned and operated, we're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. We believe that everyone should have access to fairly priced cannabis. So we work hard to get it to you for 30 to 50% less than the other guys. If you're 21 or older with a valid ID, visit us in Capitola or in Watsonville today. We're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. Check out our website, hookoutlet.com, for deals and stay groovy.
Attention content producers. You can have access to a complete digital media production facility at Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Easily rent video and audio equipment, a studio with green screen, editing suite and audio booth, all at can't say no rates. Schedule a tour to see for yourself at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
And we are back on the Freedom Forum. Jeff Bosshard here with Vernon Bohr. And Vernon had a closing thought about the Communist Chinese and what they're up to.
Yeah, it has more to do with hacking and our technology. And, is that we've created a technology that's very powerful. We're expanding it in terms of our AI, and people talk about quantum computing. And in order to protect ourselves, we've come up with ways like dual authentication to log into your account. Are we going to run into the point where our computer and computing power gets so great that there's nothing that we can do to protect ourselves, our accounts, our countries from being hacked? I just think it's worth considering.
Of course. In fact, as we go down the road here in future programs, we'll not only have some experts on AI back, we've had some before on this station, but try to predict where we're going and what we can do about it. That'll be fun.
I think the genie's out of the bottle.
It is, but we still have to try to catch up. Otherwise, I get too much of a head start on knowledge. Anyway, back to the big issues. There were several things that happened in New York that I thought, and people would generally agree, were problematic. First of all, a health insurance CEO was gunned down in the streets of New York, right there in open public, and the supposed culprit was apprehended, amazingly too easily, I thought. But the second thing was going on. Daniel Penny was on trial in New York for a killing and was found not guilty and made himself, through that trial, look like more of a hero than a heel, because he probably saved many lives, perhaps even his own, by the actions he and others took at the time. So that's New York for you. But another thing that came right after that in the same venue, the subway system, some guy set an innocent woman on fire right there in the subway. I mean, what kind of people are we?
Well, exactly. And are we New York kind of people? Or is that unique to New York? I shouldn't be laughing, but, New York, what are you teaching us to do? This is terrible. Penny should have never been charged, in my opinion.
Another one of those kind of cases,
No one should ever. That should be totally unacceptable in a civilized society that someone just tortures someone.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
well, we didn't do anything about it. I mean, the person who did it was crazy. He was going to be locked up anyway.
Yeah, and there's no justification for just walking up and shooting someone because you don't like the business they're in.
Yeah, somehow people were raised to think that such and such involvement, in this case the healthcare system, healthcare company, was somehow at fault for some of our miseries. And I can date that back to the way kids are being raised now. I'll do that on another program. Yeah. And believe me, it's serious. It's bad. But I want to break away pretty soon from just talking about this to look forward more to the future. But first I want to remark simply that the Notre Dame Cathedral opened, much to the spectacular vision that we could see, for example, on 60 Minutes, after all this time since the fire there. And note that the Syrian Assad regime had fallen during that period we're looking back on. And we found in the process that two different agencies of our government, one was financially and with materials supplying one element of the resistance, and another group, an opposing group, supported by another part of our government. So we were funding two sides of a clash, and maybe together they succeeded somewhat, getting rid of a regime that we shouldn't have had. And both President Obama and President Trump and others have had to deal with the consequences of what goes on in that little country. Another place in the Middle East that's just a constant turmoil, constant conflict, and ultimately the demise of some of our empires. Russian, English, hopefully not ours. Anyway, from that, we can move forward to Donald Trump has been inaugurated a week ago today. And during his campaign and during his speech then, he made many promises, some people would say threats, and we'd have to see which of them might be potentially something that harms people that we know, especially some people that are right here. And the one that comes to mind is what he's been saying for so long, that he's going to deport those who are here illegally, about which our Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, once said, well, these people haven't committed any crimes, they're just illegals.